My next guest is quite the extraordinary human being. She's an investigative reporter on television who just created a groundbreaking documentary for the Hispanic community, really introducing them to the idea that food can be used as preventative medicine. She is a multi-time Emmy Award winner. She is just extraordinary. Myriam Masihy is here with us today. How are you, Myriam?
I am great. Thank you so much for having me, Chuck. This is amazing.
I know it's a little bit awkward. You're used to asking the questions as opposed to being on the hot seat yourself. So I do appreciate you getting out of your comfort zone.
Yeah, it's been quite the ride. I usually, try to, as a reporter does, try to stay behind the scenes, not very in front of the camera, never talk about myself. But in this occasion, I felt that I had to open up to the community that I serve and, tell them my journey.
Well, let's talk about the community that you're serving. You're working with Telemundo, so obviously the Hispanic population here. And one of the things that we've been doing with or at the Physicians Committee is really trying to reach that community, because what we have found is that it is completely underserved in terms of proper nutrition and teaching them the fundamentals of a healthy diet. And I know that you just released this incredible documentary. I'm going to try to say it properly. Comida Como Cura, which means what?
Food as medicine.
There it is. There it is. The greatest title in the history of titles. First of all, why this project?
I started this project because I felt there was a need in the Hispanic community to have this information, like you say, but didn't just come to me. I became very ill in 2015, and by 2017, I finally was diagnosed with Sjogren's, an autoimmune disorder. And when I went to my doctors and, they put me on immunosuppressors and, steroids and, things happened. I got, bigger, which people, saw on camera because I'm a TV personality. So they're like, oh, Masihy's getting big. They didn't know why. I lost my hair. I started all the side effects that drugs have. And I would ask my doctors if there was a way naturally, or if I could change my food, if it would help. And my doctors would simply say no. I started looking because I was desperate. And I found all these documentaries in English, including Code Blue from Dr. Stancic, and all the ones that you've seen. But there was nothing in Spanish. So the first thing I did was I tried this out. I healed myself. I took some courses in nutrition and it worked and I got better. And then I said, well, now I got to take care of my community and get this information out to them. And that's when the documentary came about. I said, how come there is no documentary in Spanish talking about this? And the people I serve deserve to know this if they're going through what I'm going through.
How has it been received so far? Because I know from experience that the idea of eating an entirely plant-based diet is really kind of jarring to a lot of people.
Yes. Yes. Well, I think that, I came from an area where, I didn't, although the Hispanic community is very kind and loving, and they love the animals and they love the planet. I didn't go about telling them to eat fruits and vegetables because it was going to save the planet. I talked about my story, and my story is a story of many Hispanics. It's a story of somebody who's sick and has tried all the medicine and is still sick and then needs more medicine for the side effects of that medicine. And they related to that. And that's why it's been so successful. This documentary has been shared across the country on our network shows. It's been really big because people were hungry for this. Growing up in South America, I can tell you, we heard of this. I mean, our grandma told us about these nature retreats and all that, and you would go and heal yourself. But we tend to forget things when we come to this country. We see an abundance of food, mainly processed food. We start eating that, we start getting sick, and we forget that the health is in our food. So one, it was reminding people that that exists, and two, showing them it works. It worked on me, and it's worked on so many other people. So it was giving them hope, and it's been amazing how many people have written in. I have a disease. I'm going to give it a shot. I'm going to talk to my doctor. I'm going to find a doctor who knows about nutrition. Which is what I end up doing. And I suggest people do the same.
I love those types of emails when I get them here on the exam room. Like, it means the world to me to know that the stories that we tell, the information that we're sharing is connecting on such a profound level. Do you remember the first time you got an email or a message from a viewer who said, thank you so very much for this?
as soon as we put this documentary out, I was scared. I'm not going to lie to you, because I've been a very private person. I'm an investigative reporter. So, my stories usually are targeting somebody who did something bad. And so I've been very private about my life. So I was very afraid. This was probably the story or the project that made me most afraid, because I was opening myself up. And I would tell my family, I'm a little nervous about this. And as soon as it came out, the emails started coming in. I have Sjogren's, I have, diabetes, I have heart disease, and I'm going to give it a shot. And my doctors tell me that, there's nothing I can do. And then there's people who've told me, I've tried this and it's working. Thank you so much. And asking for recipes. That's the next thing everybody asks for.
No doubt about it. Being the investigative reporter that you are, though, I'm sure there was some skepticism there. Like, show me the proof before you actually, I guess, even tried this for yourself. So when you really started to do this digging, like, how much research did you do before you felt comfortable giving it a whirl yourself?
A lot. I read every book available. I mean, I started with the China study and Whole and Dr. Stanz's book and, Dr. Ana Negron's book. And I read a lot. And then I took the nutrition, the T. Colin Campbell's Nutrition Center's nutrition study, plant-based nutrition certificate. And I learned even more. And then I felt comfortable, knowing the studies, knowing the science. But before I did all that, I got to tell you, I did what a lot of people do. I was so desperate. I'm like, you know what? It's not like I'm going to do anything difficult. They're not telling me to take a pill. Let me give it a shot. I tried it on myself. It worked. And then I studied to see why it worked. And I found all this information. So yeah, I really did take a deep dive into this nutrition, because I wanted to know why it worked. And if I could actually tell people that it worked because of the science.
Compare how it actually worked to what your original expectations were. I'm guessing, seeing as though you're just kind of beaming today and made a documentary, it exceeded anything beyond your wildest imagination.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I was I was in a low place of my life. I mean, I'm a very active person, and, I do a lot of volunteer work outside of work. My job is very demanding. I'm one of those, Hispanic Latina moms who has to cook every day for her kids and her husband, and I'm very active. And I found myself laying on the sofa, not being able to go outside. I love to garden. I couldn't go out. I'd look out like a fishbowl. I couldn't go outside because I was so sick. I was in a lot of pain. So my life really took a big turn. I mean, I got my life back. And that's why, I hope that for other people. And I figured, it's not an easy transition. I'm not going to tell anybody it's an easy transition, but it's easier than what was going to happen to me in the long run. I know that for sure. I've been in enough hospitals to know that's not how I want to end my life.
Let's talk about your transition. So, as you were leading up to, you got your diagnosis, what was your diet like heading up to everything before it kind of culminated and you made that turn?
I love to cook. I think that's one of the reasons I've been successful in this. I love to cook. I love to try new recipes, but I was making a lot of meat recipes. I'm from Chile, so we do barbecues every weekend. Now my brother, who barbecues, puts all the veggies for me. And everybody's eating more veggies than my siblings and everything. It's amazing. But we would barbecue every weekend. I would make these, pasta, like homemade from scratch pasta. And yeah, it was very rich in processed foods or in meat. It was very rich in meat. I transitioned to another rheumatologist. The first doctor who told me that, nutrition had nothing to do with it. After I realized that it did, I changed to another rheumatologist who actually looked at the studies and would send me Mediterranean diets. This might be better. Realized there was a link between my disease and what I was eating and all these other exterior factors. So for me, immediately I started feeling better and I got my life back. I couldn't walk. Now I was walking everywhere. I started running. If you see the documentary, I run a half marathon, which I never thought I was going to be able to do again. So just changing my diet gave me my life back. And then I was able to do other things lifestyle medicine suggests, like sleeping better because I wasn't waking up with pain, meditating, exercising, all the wonderful things. I was able to enjoy it again because I was able to be mobile.
phenomenal results. But when you first started talking to your family about what it was you were going to do, I mean, did they kind of give you like the people's eyebrow looking like the Rock with that eyebrow? Like what?
Well, my husband's Cuban American, so he was brought up with lechon or pork, So, but he is the most supportive husband. I'm not selling him, so I'm not going to promote him, but he's amazing. And he saw me so sick, he's like, try it, try anything. My kids, when I started cooking this food, they were like, we're not going to be vegan. We're not going to be vegan. Is that vegan? I don't want vegan, like every kid does. And now, they're not 100% plant-based, but they do eat a lot more vegetables and they don't eat any red meat anymore. So they've tapered off a lot of the animal protein, and a lot of I've also, because I've introduced so many veggies at home, they've tried and liked new veggies and like new fruits. So at the beginning, there was a little bit of resistance as to not me doing it, but everybody having to do it because I'm the chef of the house. But they were always supportive of me because, they saw how sick I was, and, they were going to support whatever I did to try to get better.
So your battle was with Sjogren's, but let's talk about the rates of chronic disease among the Hispanic community, which are far higher than many other communities here in the States. When it comes to combating chronic disease, we're talking diabetes, heart disease, high blood pressure, all of that. How are the rates currently with the Hispanic community?
Diabetes is pretty high. It is, and obesity rates are really high in the Hispanic community. And I'll tell you, one of my producers who takes our calls, and we get hundreds of calls a week because I'm an investigative reporter, people asking for help. She would listen to her. She's got the biggest heart in the world, and she was losing her eyesight because her diabetes was so out of control. And, before I even thought of doing this, I started sending her, Fork Over Knives, What the Health, all these documentaries. I'm like, just watch this stuff. Just watch it and see what you think. And she changed that, and, she got progressively better. She's in Texas, so she would travel to Mexico to get blood work, every other week. And she saw her numbers coming down. So Hispanics really need this information because, like the rest of the community, heart disease is big, diabetes is big. I mean, we have people losing limbs who are getting dialysis who could actually prevent this. And I think the biggest thing that I learned during this process, and that I repeat to like whoever has these issues, is the role fat has in our diet. How animal fat can actually, increase your risk of diabetes, type 2 diabetes. My father, type 2 diabetic, and, has had a triple bypass. I call him a scammer because he's actually in the documentary because he's healed himself with this kind of nutrition, but he uses it as medicine. He gets better and then he goes back to eating all his stuff. But my father, when he eats what I, serve him, he doesn't have to, inject himself, so it's pretty amazing. And it's so instant for us to see a difference, and that as soon as they start trying it, they immediately get it. It may be difficult, but they know it's there, and they and just like my father knows this medicine is there for him, and it's absolutely free. And that's what I like the most. Nobody's selling anything here. I think Dr. Greger says, when was the last time Big Broccoli took your doctor out for dinner? I think that's his saying. I love Dr. Greger. He's right on with that. Honestly, there's no miracle pill. It's just eat more, what your grandma told you, eat more fruits and veggies, and less of the other stuff, and eat more real food. We eat so much processed food in this country. I have a family member now who was very sick and got tested, and her pesticide levels are out of this world high. And she's a healthy eater. And it's honestly, if we don't watch what we're eating in this country, our disease is not just for Hispanics, but in general, are going to keep increasing. Another thing that happens with Hispanics is we come from countries where legumes are big. I mean, we ate lentils in Chile all the time, but we come here and meat is so much cheaper and so affordable for us that we think, okay, well, now we can eat this all the time because we can afford it and it's abundant. And that's, as soon as we get to this country, we start adapting, we start getting all of these diseases. And I think people remember eating better in our countries. They remember that. So I think that's why they made a connection with this.
You are far from the first person to tell me that once you immigrate to the United States, your health starts to fall apart after you begin to eat that standard American diet. That's why they call it the sad diet. Speaking for people who have immigrated from Asia and India, Africa, the UK, like everybody who comes here winds up, losing their health. So it's really kind of sad to me that more isn't made about that connection up front. And I love what you were saying about, grandma knew best way back when, more fruits, more vegetables. In this country, though, I wish that there was more coaching about what truly is a healthy fruit or vegetable. My grandma, for instance, she considered a can of baked beans, whether or not there was pork in that, to be a vegetable. So potato chips, vegetable, baked beans, a vegetable, and then you pair that with hot dogs and macaroni and cheese, and there you have a well balanced dinner. And that's how I got up to 420 pounds and was on blood pressure medication in high school.
Wow.
So it's just insane to me, that more isn't taught about this. So I'm glad that you were able just kind of to revert back to your roots a little bit to make this process, this change a little bit easier for you, even though you said that it wasn't necessarily the easiest thing in the world for you.
Yeah, I mean, knowing that that's how we used to eat, it's always in the back of your head, those memories. I have this thing where I have, this little gadget where I chop my cilantro, my parsley. And that was my job when I was a kid. I was the one who would chop the herbs, and I smell that. And it reminds me of my mom's kitchen when I was a kid. So, it's in there. We all remember, especially, if we immigrated, a little later, we all remember, eating this kind of food, this healthy food when we were kids and just bringing it back. What makes it difficult, the transition, is we get set in our ways of, cooking the same things over again. I mean, I could throw a piece of chicken on the skillet and have some, white rice done in 20 minutes. And that was easy. And my kids were fed in no time. And so this requires a little bit more chopping, or a little bit more prepping, a little bit more organization. But I rather put the time in now. It's like a bank account. You're putting the time in now, chopping vegetables and doing all this. And then, you're gonna retire with those benefits. You're gonna cash it in just like your 401. You're gonna be able to retire with health. And that's what I'm doing. I'm doing like a savings account now. Yes, I spend a little bit more time chopping vegetables and prepping some meals, but I know that I'm gonna be able to be mobile when I'm old and continue to do the things I like to do.
All right. And here's the big question I'm sure everybody's wondering is, what foods are you depositing into that account that you were just talking about? What are your favorites?
It's funny. At 40 something years old, I don't remember what time, I think it was like 46 years old, I discovered kale. Kale was new for me. I was like, what is that? Now I even grow it in my yard. So kale was brand new. That just came out last year, like I say. I love, I do like my beans. I love lentils. I can have lentils any which way. I have a whole bunch of recipes for lentils. You can't mess up lentils. Black beans, rice, brown rice, for like big staples. Aside from my big salads, black beans, brown rice, and maduros, or right, plantains in the air fryer. I could eat that every day. So that's one of my go-to meals. A lot of Asian food. I discovered bok choy at 40 something years old too. There was a lot of vegetables out there I didn't know. And it's funny because, this is embarrassing, but I would eat Chinese food and bok choy was in there, but I didn't know what that was. So I love bok choy. I love kale. I've always liked salads, but now I put like yummy stuff. I mean, I discovered chia seeds. I discovered, pepitas. I rediscovered pepitas, the little seminal, the little pumpkins, so to put in my salad. I learned to eat eggplant. I learned to eat zucchini. I didn't like those growing up, but your taste buds change. And after you start, eating cleaner, you start liking things. I never liked yuca before, and now I like yuca. So it's amazing. There's just so many vegetables. I was like, Dr. Ana Negron was talking about, making the switch from animal protein to the other stuff. And it's like, you have chicken, fish, pork, meat. And then in the the plant world, you have so many, you could sit here all day and fire them off. Broccoli. I love broccoli. I've always liked broccoli, but now I put more of it in our diet. My kids love it. I can't even pull it out of the oven fast enough, and they eat it like a snack.
Well, okay, so two things. One, the fact that your kids eat broccoli, that is just amazing. And I think the entire world has just stood up and paid attention to what it is that you just said. Two, holy God, you get the quote of the year. I know it's only March, but you get the quote of the year. Kale just came out last year. Oh my God, I love you so much. Please don't ever leave. Like, this is just phenomenal. Oh my goodness. But I do have one final question for you, and it is kind of a serious one. And it goes to the heart of what it is that we do here on the exam room, and certainly to the heart of what it is you hope to accomplish with this documentary. And that is, what would your message be to someone who is feeling like their health challenges are hopeless? No matter what it is that they do in life, they are destined to lose their vision because of diabetes, or perhaps a limb. They're destined to die of a heart attack because that's what happened to their father, their grandfather, their grandmother, whatever the case may be. You are living proof that it doesn't have to be that way. So what would your message then, Myriam, be to that person?
I think genes are just one example of what could happen to you. I know I am genetically predisposed to certain diseases that my parents and my grandparents have, but I've been able to revert a lot of my disease and a lot of my risk factors by changing this. So what we inherited was, yes, our genes, but also our way of life. And if you can change the way of life, you inherited that dish full of fat, you inherited, la carne, the meat, and you can change that and it'll change your path. So my word to you would be, give it a shot. I mean, it's free. I mean, all you have to do is just, instead of buying one thing at the supermarket or at the farmer's market, buy something else and give it a shot. Give yourself a shot. Give yourself a chance to get better, and you're going to see how you can feel a lot better.
Masihy says, take that. Those are words of wisdom, my friends. Myriam, thank you so very much. We've put a link to the documentary in the show description or in the episode notes. So please definitely go ahead and give that a view and share it with your friends, your family. Let's continue to make the world a healthier place. Thank you so very much for being here.
Thank you so much, Chuck.
If your health IQ is a couple of points higher than it was a few minutes ago, go ahead and like this video or subscribe to the YouTube channel. And to take it even higher, head over to Apple Podcast or wherever you get your favorite shows. Look for The Exam Room by the Physicians Committee. Hit the subscribe button there as well and help to make your world a healthier place.